Ladies and gents, so welcome back here to another video. So today I want to talk to you people about the American hip-hop scene versus the Polish hip-hop scene. And the reason why I'm making this type of video is because a lot of people probably might not know this, but I do come from a Polish family, but I obviously grew up in San Diego in the US. But in this video, what I want to talk to people about is just give you people just a little bit of a I guess you could say kind of like a Spark Notes version, or like a somewhat of a in-depth video about how the American hip-hop scene has shaped the hip-hop scene in Poland, because obviously when it comes to the US and Poland, obviously the hip-hop scene, while it is very big in the US, obviously it is also, I think, very big in Poland as well. Obviously, it doesn't have the same size as how it does here in the US, but obviously, for Poland, I think Poland also has a pretty big hip-hop scene there and a hip-hop community as well, and that's kind of what I want to talk about here in this video. So let's get started. So a lot of people don't know this. Obviously, I think it was like the 80s in the US when hip-hop became really popular, especially with the emergence of a lot of successful hip-hop groups like NWA, the Wu-Tang Clan, and all that stuff. Obviously, it was the 80s and 90s where hip-hop here in the US really was at its peak, I think, especially, with the emergence of rappers like Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube. You also had The Game from the mid 2000s, who was also a big artist in the hip hop community. You also have obviously the main artist 50 Cent, Drake, and all that stuff. But obviously in the 90s, at the same time, while NWA was at its peak in the 90s and the Wu-Tang Clan and all that stuff, in Poland, for example, the hip hop scene in Poland really became, I think, popular in the 90s. That was obviously the 90s for Poland, because that's really where I feel like that the whole hip-hop scene started there, because obviously in the 90s there was a very big rap group, a big hip-hop group in Poland called Paktofonika, which basically translates to Pactophonics, I believe. Yeah, Pactophonics or something. So yeah, that was obviously one of the original rap groups in Poland, Paktofonika, and they were also a very successful Polish rap group. So I feel like that that the hip hop emergence in the 80s and 90s in the US is what played a big crucial role, I think, in Poland, embracing also the whole hip hop culture and all that stuff. Because obviously with Paktofonika, they were a very famous group. One of the prominent singers in that group was Magik, which means magic, I think, in Polish. It translates to magic. And he was a big, also big famous rapper, just like any other rapper. You want your songs to do well, your albums to do well, so that, you can safely say that all that hard work and sacrifices you made into being a rapper paid off. But obviously, in the case of Magik, for example, the rapper himself, he was very big in Poland around that time, but I don't remember anything because, I was very young back then, and he was big in the 90s. And with Magik, he was a rapper who had a lot of talent, I think, but, the sad, tragic part about Magik is that obviously, in 2000, he sadly took his own life. He was only like, 22, 23, so he was very young when he took his own life, because obviously, I believe that around that time, it was big major news in Poland when one of the most prominent members of the rap group, Paktofonika, ended up taking his own life. And, it was just a very sad, tragic event for, the Polish hip-hop community in Poland, mainly because he really was, I think, the reason why the hip-hop community also in Poland is pretty sizable, I guess you could say. And, with Magik, there were various reasons, what I know about Magik is that, he apparently was diagnosed with schizophrenia, if I'm not sure. And a lot of people don't know this. Schizophrenia is just a very horrible thing to have that I would never wish for anybody to have, And, that's the thing with Magik, is that, he was dealing with his own mental struggles and all that stuff. And apparently, I did my research as to, what was, the thing that led him to doing what he did. And apparently some people say that his album didn't do so well like how he thought, and he felt very stressed out. However, in one other theory, some people were saying that Magik, aka Piotr Łuszcz, meaning Peter Łuszcz, that was his last name. He apparently was supposed to go to the Polish army or something, from what I read. I'm not 100% sure, but because of that could be one theory as to why he did what he did, And obviously, I think that he didn't want to go to the Polish army because obviously, with Magik, he did have schizophrenia, because I remember one of his songs, Jestem Bogiem, which basically means I'm a god. excuse me, what is that? Okay, never mind. That was just an ant. But as I'm saying, Magik basically, he also was like that type of rapper that basically, he rapped about his own struggles, especially about his struggles with schizophrenia. The song Jestem Bogiem, it really hits. If you grew up in Poland and you know the rap group Paktofonika, that song, it kind of hits you because obviously, that song I think was very, it has like a very deep emotional meaning behind it or something like that. And, that song, where he talked about his struggles with, with basically schizophrenia and all that stuff, that could be one other theory as to why Magik did what he did. Because obviously, 22 years later, he's still like, I felt like that he still could have been a very big artist in Poland, especially, the way how the hip hop has transitioned in Poland in the last 20 years, especially going back to the 90s and then, the early 2000s. So yeah, Paktofonika, they were very famous back then. But then, in the mid 2000s, there was another prominent artist in Poland who's actually still, I think, one of the most popular rappers in Poland, and that is Peja. No, not the NBA player, but there's a different name. The name Peja obviously is also the name of another very famous, successful Polish rapper who's very big in Poland, I still think, because obviously in the 2000s, that's when his career really took off. And I personally myself am a fan of Peja. If you guys haven't listened to his music, just type in Peja rapper, and I think you'll like his music. I think he makes really good music, especially from the mid 2000s. I always listen to him and I always liked his songs. So yeah, Peja, he's the most famous rapper I think in Poland recently, the most successful. And there is also, I think, Teda. Teda, he's also another prominent rapper in Poland. And then you have OSTR as well, who is also another rapper in Poland. So obviously, with the American hip hop scene, I feel like that basically a lot of, people growing up in Poland, especially like in the 90s and 2000s, when let's just say the Polish economy wasn't at its best, I feel like that a lot of the now artists like Peja, Teda, and all those mainstream rappers in Poland, I feel like that those guys also definitely did take inspiration from like, the other rap groups in the US, and especially from rappers like Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and all the mainstream rappers in the US. Well, the Polish rappers that I mentioned, they are the mainstream, they kind of, I still think, are at times like the mainstream rappers in Poland, but there's also other rappers in Poland too that have been rising as well. But I'm just talking about the mainstream rappers, because I'm pretty sure there's also a lot of other rappers in Poland, even though, I haven't really followed Polish hip hop recently, like how I did in the in the mid 2000s, because I do still listen to Polish hip hop songs, but mainly the old school ones, from like the mid 2000s and all that stuff. So, if you think about it, Peja, for example, he also did a collab, I think, with Ice-T, I believe, Ice-T, another mainstream rapper here, Peja, I think, did a collab with him. So obviously, I think to myself that the American hip hop scene, I think, is a big reason why the hip hop community, in Poland is I think, pretty sizable, especially in other countries too. For example, like, I guess you could say Russia, even Germany. I think that the American hip hop scene in general just played a big inspirational, I guess you could say, movement for other hip hop artists too, especially, in the UK and any part of Europe, hell, even around the world, as far as, Asia, Australia, the Middle East, Africa, especially South America. I think that the American hip hop scene is the scene that played a really big role, not just in Poland, but around the world too. So yeah, especially as far as even Russia, for example, with Timothy, the most famous rapper, I think, in all of Eastern Europe, Timothy, a lot of people don't know, obviously. I listened to a couple of Timothy's songs, and, he's obviously the more popular, I think, rapper / the most popular rapper in Eastern Europe, especially in Russia, from what I did in my research and all that stuff. But I think I pretty much said what I had to say here in this video about how I compared the American hip hop scene versus the Polish hip hop scene, because recently, obviously, I think that the hip hop scene in America is still pretty big, maybe not as big as well, it's still pretty big, I have to say, but obviously I feel like that in the 90s, it was way more massive compared to now, because nowadays, especially with the new genres of hip hop that have recently evolved in the last 10 years or so. But, for Poland, I guess you could say that in terms of Polish hip hop, also there's also been like a big recent change, I think, in Polish hip hop too, where a lot of artists have also started developing the use of auto tune and all that. But you know, obviously, I just thought I would make this video just to compare it and tell you guys just how, you know, at least for me, you know, since I also have a bit of knowledge in terms of Polish hip hop about how the American hip hop scene played a big role, I think, in developing the Polish hip hop scene in Poland. So yeah, guys, I think I already said what I had to say in this video, so hope you found this video useful and or entertaining. And if I missed out any key facts in this video, please let me know why in the comment section below. But I hope you found this video informative. If you did, just subscribe, and thank you for your support. Take care.